Beyond 3D. Welcome back tonight, Saturday nights live, mornings in Peninsula. Matt, RPPFM 98.7, 98.3.
Welcome to Beyond 3D.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Hey, guess what?
What happened?
A flood in India killed 40 endangered rare rhinos.
14 endangered rare rhinos. 40 rhinos.
And they're the endangered ones too.
Well, good luck to them now.
I think that's
load up on pictures.
I think that's God's way of saying
about time they left.
About time.
Yeah, I would say so. Anyway, this week has been a fascinating week. There's been a lot of information out there. There's a lot going on in the U.S. around El Presidente and all of his lovely things that he's doing with his family. But this is going to be a special week because we were talking to a person that we just saw in the studio a minute ago, and he decided to come in and spend some time with us.
I'm pointing at him now.
Yeah, there you go.
He's on a gag.
Yep.
He can't speak just yet.
Not yet. Okay.
But we will have
the great one.
The great one. The great one will be in a second.
Absolutely. So you guys sit back, relax, hold on to your hats, because anytime this guy talks, you really do have to listen and have a dictionary ready, and also have Google open so you can look up a few things. We'll be right back.
I know he's going to make me stop him many times.
Well, that's the way it works.
We'll be right back.
Take care. We'll see you in a little bit with somebody you want to hear from. Beyond 3D.
Throughout human history, people have tried to create utopia, the perfect society. In fact, America, the American dream, in some sense, was based on utopianism. Why do we have the Shaker movement? Why did we have the Quakers? Why did we have so many different kinds of religious movements that fled Europe looking to create a utopia here in the Americas? Well, we know the Shakers have disappeared, and many of these colonies have also disappeared, only to be found in footnotes in American textbooks. And the question is why? One reason why is scarcity. Because back then, the Industrial Revolution was still young, and societies had scarcity. Scarcity creates conflict. And unless you have a way to resolve conflict, your colony falls apart. How do you allocate resources? Who gets access to food when there's a famine? Who gets shelter when there's a snowstorm and all of a sudden you've eaten up your seed corn? These are questions that face the early American colonists, and that's the reason why we only see the ghost towns of these utopias. However, now we have nanotechnology. And with nanotechnology, perhaps, who knows, maybe in 100 years, we'll have something called the replicator. Now, the replicator is something you see in Star Trek. It's called the molecular assembler, and it takes ordinary raw materials, breaks them up at the atomic level, and joins the joints in different ways to create new substances. If you have a molecular assembler, you can turn, for example, a glass into wood, or vice versa. You would have the power of a magician. In fact, the power of a god. The ability to literally transform the atoms of one substance into another. And we see it on Star Trek. It's also the most subversive device of all, because if utopias fail because of scarcity, then what happens when you have infinite abundance? What happens when you simply ask and it comes to you? One of my favorite episodes on Star Trek is when the Enterprise encounters a space capsule left over from the 20th century, the bad 20th century. People died of all these horrible diseases, and many people froze themselves, knowing that in the 23rd century or so, they'll be thawed out and their diseases will be cured. Well, sure enough, it's the 23rd century now. The Enterprise finds a space capsule and begins to revive all these people and cure them of cancer, cure them of incurable genetic diseases. And then one of these individuals, however, was a banker. He's revived, and he says to himself, my God, my gamble worked. I'm alive. I'm in the 23rd century. And he said, call my stockbroker. Call my banker. I am rich. I am rich. My investments, they've been sitting there in the bank for centuries. I must be a quadrillionaire. And then the crew of the Enterprise looks at this man and says, What is money? What is a bank? What is a stockbroker? We don't have any of these in the 23rd century. And then they say, if you want something, you simply ask for it, and you get it. Now, that's subversive. That's revolutionary. Because if all utopian societies vanish because of scarcity and conflict, what happens when there is no scarcity? What happens when you simply ask and you get what you want? This has enormous philosophical implications. For example, why bother to work? Why bother to go to work when you simply ask for things and it comes to you? Now, some sociologists think that if drugs, for example, are totally legalized, absolutely legalized, then maybe 3 to 5% of the human race will become permanent drug addicts. That's the price for total legalization of drugs. I don't know, but that's a number that people talk about. What happens when we have this society based on replicators? Then will we have 3 to 5% of the human race become permanent parasites? This is a possibility. The whole nature of the human psyche is based around producing things, doing something, making a contribution. What happens when you don't have to do that anymore? What happens when there's infinite plenty? What happens if there is a utopia? The detractors will say, bah, humbug. There is no replicator. It violates the laws of physics. Well, actually, that's not true. There actually is a nanobot that can replicate, actually take apart molecules and rearrange them in fantastic ways. Mother Nature has already created it. It's called the ribosome. The ribosome can take hamburgers, milkshakes, and turn them into a baby in 9 months. That is a miracle. The ribosome takes hamburgers, French fries, potato chips, breaks apart the molecules, and reassembles them into DNA. Mother Nature has created the replicator. It replicates humans. But what happens when humans create replicators by which we can replicate everything?
Beyond 3D. Welcome back tonight to Beyond 3D. Matt.
Yes.
We have another special guest in studio tonight.
The beauty of being doing live radio and being in a radio station, we have
Dr. Soos.
Dr. Soos is in the house.
Dr. Soos is in the house. Good evening, Michael.
Hello, Clint. Hello, Matt.
How are you? You good?
Be with you again. It's interesting. We were just talking off air.
Yep.
And about some passionate subjects that I've been thinking about for years.
So, Michael, tell us some more about these wonderful ideas.
Okay, I'll start with a story.
Okay,
and then that'll
stories.
And
this could go anywhere, Matt.
Go for it.
And that's going to segue into our main topic, which is about the universal basic income guarantee. Sometimes known as just universal basic income or basic income guarantee, UBIG or BIG or whatever you want to call it.
Can I ask you a question? Is this something that actually exists, or is this an idea that you have?
Matt was telling me it existed in a town in Canada.
It does exist. They went in Ontario, in the province of Ontario.
The lovely Trudeau.
Just something about you. The way I'm looking at you, whatever. Keep looking at me.
Trudeau decided that he would allow a test to go on for a year, and they actually experimented with this to see whether or not, if people were given, if all of their needs were met, whether or not they would just laze around at home watching television all day, or would they actually get out and be productive.
I heard about this. a couple of weeks ago. Tell us, Michael. I actually know that something very positive came out of this, didn't it?
Yes, well, Matt knows the story. I'll let him continue the results of the story and where the experiment is at the moment, and then I'll go on with what I say.
Well, Michael was talking about this, and I remembered that they had done this experiment in Ontario, and what tended to happen when they looked at the study was when a person's basic income needs were met, they actually were more productive and wanted to get out and do things in their community to help others. And the experiment basically showed that people were not couch potatoes anymore. They were not lazy. They were actually out and engaging in the community because they knew that they didn't have to worry about food, clothing, shelter, etc. The experiment actually proved that people were more productive when they knew a government subsidy was actually supporting them. It allowed them to expend more energy, not concentrating on meeting their needs. They were able to go out and do for others.
He's a trailblazer, isn't he?
I think so.
I like Justin.
You're scared now, right? Don't feel me, baby. It's just testing.
Did a very good job with that. Michael was also talking about the fact that Elon Musk and Mr. Zuckerberg were also looking into, or they were supporters of such a project happening in different countries around the world. That's what I remember. It did work. So now, Michael.
Yes, so I've got a couple of stories. One story, very fascinating story that I learned when I was studying aeronautical engineering at Sydney University in 1972. There was
I was 1 year old.
Oh, wow.
just as a time marker there. Go.
When you study aeronautical engineering, you have to study a subject called thermodynamics because it gives you the theory and practice of how engines work. Otto cycle, internal combustion engines, jet engines and all that. You've got to know the thermodynamics of how these engines work. Now, of course, in this study, you've got to learn both the theory and the practice. Now, the theory is based on a body of research done by Mr. Gibbs in America at a university in America. I can't remember the actual university because it was so long ago when I heard this story. But anyway, the basic story was there were two brothers. One brother was very high up in the administration in this university. Call him Mr. Gibbs Senior, and then he had his little brother who was a researcher. He had tenure in the university, but he was in the thermodynamics department of this university. Now, even though you've got tenure, it is expected that you're supposed to teach and also write papers so that you can keep your job. Now, this particular man, the little brother, the researcher, started off on a research project whereby he went on and on and on, and he didn't do any teaching, he didn't do any research apart from what he was working on, this main subject of research. He didn't write any papers. And after a while, the university administration got a bit worried. They said, well, you're not, they chided him. They said, well, you're not teaching. Why aren't you teaching? Why aren't you writing papers? You're supposed to contribute to the status of this university. And they were going to fire him. They said, you're not doing your job, so we're going to fire you. But his big brother, Mr. Gibbs Senior, in administration, had a lot of sway and was able to protect the job of his little brother.
Not what you know is who you know, Michael.
That's right, yeah. So anyway, this went on for 20 years, 2 decades.
What? Hang on a minute. This guy tried to hang on. What? Hang on. Hang on. This guy held his job by not doing his job for 20 years.
Because of the seniority of his brother.
Okay.
He was able to keep his job, and this whole time, for 20 years, the little brother did no teaching, did no papers, did nothing. And he was able to keep the job because of his elder brother being able to influence the university to allow his little brother to keep his job. Went on for 20 years. And so the status of the little brother went around the university, he's a hopeless guy, he's just he thinks he's got a sinecure, that he doesn't have to do anything, he's lazy, he's a good for nothing. Anyway, at the end of 20 years, the little brother published this book. And it's called Gibbs Free Energy. Gibbs Free Energy. Huge Bible, it's sort of, 6 centimeters thick. It is now used as the Bible of thermodynamics everywhere. And all the big companies that make these jet engines and all these rockets and everything, they use that theory to apply that theory in the production of, internal combustion engines, refrigerators, jet engines, rocket engines and all that. And as a result of that, he was hailed, he's a great researcher. We in the university, they probably said, we've got this great researcher here, he's one of us, and they've been trying to fire him for 20 years. But the point I'm trying to make is, because this guy was protected by his brother, and he kept on getting his salary for 20 years, and it seemed as though, he was just a lazy good for nothing. At the end of 20 years, he came out with this massive work that is the Bible of thermodynamics now. Now, if he had not had that opportunity to do that pure research, that pure science, that would never have come about. That research would never have come about. So this feeds into...
I'm hanging on his every word here, Matt. I really am.
Feeds into another story, which is similar to that.
Well. Yeah.
There is an advertising America.
Hang on a sec, we're on story 2?
Yep, story 2.
Story 2.
So this story 2 is about an advertising executive also in America, and he liked to paint on the weekends, but his job required him to work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week at this advertising agency, and then he was very creative. He did his job well, but he felt tired. He felt as though, he needed a break on the weekends, obviously, like everybody does. But on the weekend, he had a family, so Saturday was basically taken up with family duties, like the chores around the house, taking the kids to sport. And then they had a house in the country where he used to go and paint. So Sunday morning he'd pack up, go to the house in the country. Sunday afternoon he would paint, and then Sunday night he'd have to drive back to his home and then start the week all over again. So in that week he only had like 4 hours once a week to do his painting. Anyway, so he got sick of this. He said, I don't want to do this the rest of my life because there's still not enough time to paint, to do the creative thing. So he went to his boss. His boss was very understanding. And he made this deal with his boss. He said, boss, I want you to give me 2 days off a week. So I work for 3 days a week. You still pay me my full salary, only working 3 days a week. So I get 4 days a week off, being the 2 days of the weekend and Thursday and Friday, because I want to spend more time painting. Now, just if you could do this for 6 months, and then if my performance has decreased over that 6 months, then you can fire me and then I'll be on my way. But otherwise, if you find, I've been doing the same amount of work or even better over that 6 months, then I want to keep my 4 days a week off. Anyway, they tried it out for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, the boss found that the guy was more productive. He had more output during those 3 days than he had done during the 5 days that he used to do before. Mm-hmm. And the advantage of the employee was he had 4 days a week off. So he'd, a half day a week, he'd do the chores on the Wednesday morning or the Thursday morning instead of the Saturday morning. Did all that stuff. And I don't know about the sports or whatever, but anyway, he had 3.5 days available to him to do his artwork, do his painting. So he did his relaxation. He was able to pursue his passion because his boss gave him that time off. He was happy. The boss was happy because he was more productive during those 3 days than he was during the 5 days when he was stressed out of his brain, having to work 5 days a week. And at the end of the 6 months, the boss said, fine, 3 days a week, that's fine. You got the 4 days a week off, full pay. So
what country was this?
America.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting in America. But in America, there's very creative people there, very, forward-thinking bosses as well. So these two stories sort of feed into this idea of the basic income guarantee, otherwise known as the universal basic income or basic income guarantee. And as Matt said, if people have the opportunity to be able to follow their passion by being given the financial support so they can do that, and that just doesn't mean everybody who's got access to New Start, which is whatever it is, 14,000, 10,000.
We're talking Centrelink, like
Centrelink.
Government assistance.
Yeah, government assistance in Australia is called Centrelink, or Social Security in other countries. So at the moment, it's a very, very basic income. It's just it's even below the poverty level.
Yeah, it's not livable.
It's not livable. You can't pay for a mortgage on that. You can't support a family. And so even people on Centrelink, they have to get income from somewhere else. And if they can't get a job. A lot of people can't get a job because of whatever it is, ageism or racism or whatever it is. And so a lot of people descend into crime or whatever, you know. Not everybody, but some do.
Why are you looking at me? Why is everybody looking at me?
No.
So anyway, if we had this basic income guarantee, so now Matt's story, they supplied, I think it was about $1,000 a month? $1,600 a month, so $400 a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot better than what Centrelink gives us in Australia. It's probably about 4 times what Centrelink gives you in Australia.
We have to take a break.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's life.
Beyond 3D.
Welcome back to Beyond 3D this weekend. Clint and Matt in the studio talking with the great one, Michael Soos, about universal income, which is actually a really good topic. And most people, in my opinion, when they look at the actual numbers behind universal income, will see that it is actually feasible.
Michael?
Yes, so...
continue.
Thank you very much. Yes. So anyway, we're talking about, you know, all the stresses involved in people not having enough money and being forced to do work that they hate doing. So I've done some numbers on this, and instead of paying, you know, Centrelink payment, I think everybody who is a permanent resident of a country, not visitors of course that come in as tourists or whatever, but permanent residents of a country should be entitled to a decent basic income, and that means a basic income that they can use to support their family, and they can pay mortgage, they can pay decent food, they can pay for decent health care, so they can get, you know, the proper diet, and they've got the time to actually get enough rest at night time, because they don't have to stress sort of, you know, doing a 10-hour day, coming home, looking after the family, getting to bed late, having to get up early and doing that grind every day. They've got the time to rest, get proper sleep, have a proper diet, follow their passion and all that.
May I ask you a question? We're talking about levelling the playing field here. Taking the top percenters and bringing them down and raising the lower bottom half up.
Yeah.
When you're battling the oligarchy and the fiscal hierarchy and those above, Michael, do you have any suggestions on how to begin this transition?
Yes, I've got some thoughts about that. I'll come to that.
Awesome.
After I've just quickly mentioned the numbers. Now, in terms of the numbers, what I'm suggesting is using the Australian Bureau of Statistics figure of average weekly earnings, which comes to about 74,000 Australian dollars.
Who's getting paid that?
That's about $1,500 a week. That
I don't know.
Surprised me too.
Yeah, that's pretty shockingly high.
Yeah.
I'm obviously moving in the wrong circles here.
Yeah, obviously what it shows you is there's a lot of people making a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Wow.
That includes all the big company directors, of course.
That's right.
Plus a lot of people, you know, trades, and a lot of people doing programming.
But see, I look at that from a different point of view, where that's not an accurate snapshot.
That's the ABS figures in Australia.
Yes, but when you're including CEOs and what their pay is, it's totally one's not the same as the other. So, I mean, the parameters are so extreme.
But it also includes all the people who do part-time work, you know, like casuals might only work 1 hour a week at Domino's.
So what you're saying is
it includes all them too.
What you lose on the swings, you're gaining on the roundabouts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but you need to use some figure to start from. Okay. Now, what I'm suggesting is that the basic income guarantee shouldn't be even the $1,600 a month like it was in Canada. $1,600 Canadian dollars a month. And in Switzerland, they have a system there called the Citizens Initiated Referendum, whereby if they get 150,000 signatures over a period of 18 months, and they present that petition to the government by law has to run that referendum, even if they don't want to. By law, they have to run it.
Can we do that here? Is that possible? No, I don't. I'm asking. Is that possible?
We have to start another party and do all this as one of the policies, and get voted in. Yeah. Anyway, so the government in Switzerland, they ran the referendum because legally they were required to do that. And but the thing was, in Switzerland, there seems to be a majority view there that you have to earn your income, and so it was lost. But as part of the referendum question, the data that they used was the basic income was going to be around about 2,400 Swiss francs per month. So that comes to 600 Swiss francs per week. Now the Swiss franc is about the same as the Australian dollar, so they were suggesting about 600 Australian dollars per week. Now what I'm suggesting is, at the very least, we do average weekly earnings, but I think to make it worthwhile and for the simplicity of numbers, it should be 100,000 Australian dollars a year. So that comes out to about, so divide that by 50, $2,000 a week, like that. So, and that's only 500 more than the average weekly earnings of
Just think how much extra time you could meditate, not needing to go to work.
Yes. Well, that's another thing, meditation. I'll come to that in a minute. But just imagine if everybody...
He's on fire, man. He's on fire.
Yeah. Just imagine if everybody had $100,000 a year basic income guarantee, $2,000 a week. You could afford all the homeless people. They could go to any real estate agent and say, okay, what have you got available? And then the real estate agent says, okay, sir, you need to prove your job, income and all this stuff. And then they say, I'm on the UBIG system, on the basic income guarantee. And then the real estate agent knows, by that time they would know, okay, that's a guaranteed income from the government. It goes on forever as long as you're living. And so the real estate agent would say to the person, yes sir, 3 bags full, sir, what would you like? 3-bedroom house, 4-bedroom house, mansion, whatever it is. And they could afford to pay the rent on that. And that would only be for the short term, because $100,000 a year you could afford to pay off a mortgage.
What would stop, Matt, prices in real estate going up? Because everybody has more income.
Well, you'd have a situation like you have in Germany now, where if you get any kind of capital gain on housing, it's no more than 0.5 to 1% per year.
Wow.
Not like it is here, where, what was it, Melbourne? In the last year, it's gone up about 13% in a year.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Just imagine how that would stimulate the building trade. There'd be a lot more buildings of people, and there would be more decentralised towns throughout Australia, so people could move to cheaper areas. And the other thing is, if you're on a universal basic income guarantee, you don't have to be on a commuter route. You don't need to be close to a train station. You don't need to be close to a freeway, because you get this income via the internet, goes into your bank account. You don't have to go anywhere. You can stay at home all the time if you like. Or, as Matt was saying, people still want to contribute to the community. They can contribute locally. They don't have to travel to.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. That's my job. I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Yes, go right ahead.
If everybody stayed at home, there'd be less cars on the road, and the petrol companies would not make as much money.
Isn't that a good thing?
Well, for us it is. For us it's a great thing. For them it's not, and they will fight that tooth and nail.
Well, I'm coming to that.
Great, keep going.
Coming to that. Anyway, so having that universal basic income guarantee, it would stop a lot of pollution, because people don't have to go to work in their cars, polluting cars and whatever. They could afford to buy a house, and they can live anywhere in Australia, because you can get basically the internet anywhere in Australia. You got the money, can be sent over the phone lines, over the internet system, and so you can live anywhere. So it would decentralise the overpopulation of the urban areas. That would bring down house prices, because people would be leaving the big cities where they can't afford anymore.
Awesome.
Bring down the prices. Also, it would stimulate building activity, because people want new houses, so builders have to supply the new houses so they can do that. But the builders would do a proper job, because the builder...
He's never met a builder. You've never met builders before.
Because the only builders that would be around around that would be doing the job
with
as those have the passion to do the work, because those builders that don't have the passion to do the work and they're just doing it to make money, they say, well, I can go on the universal basic income guarantee, I don't need to build anymore, I hate the work anyway. And so the only builders left are the ones who actually want to do the work.
I think trades would die out.
I don't.
I do. I think trades like plumbers.
But the fact of the matter is, no, I don't think anybody really wants to get down in a ditch and deal with the sewerage. But the fact of the matter, it has to be done. And there are going to be some people who will say, well, look, that's the way I can contribute.
Well, maybe
so one day a week, I'm going to go to the plant, I'm going to learn how this works, and I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do something about it. The same thing with the telephones, the same thing with electricity, whether it be solar, whether it be wind power. People will want to learn what is going on. And the fact of the matter is, what Michael says, I think, is very valid, because what would happen, people will want to go back to school to learn those things that they had to give a miss a long time ago. They'll go back and say, well, maybe I can take a look at engineering. Maybe I can take a look at fashion design. Maybe I'm going to find a way to contribute. I think that's the whole thing. They don't have to worry about how am I going to keep a roof over my head.
I have to take a break.
Fair enough.
Beyond 333. Welcome back tonight, Matt.
Indeed.
To another edition
Beyond 3D.
Of Beyond 3D. Saturday night, 98.7, 98.3, RPPFM.
Indeed.
Michael, Dr. Soos.
Thank you, Clint.
How are you?
Glad to be here.
You're on a roll tonight. You're on a roll tonight with all these wonderful ideas. Matt, there is a giant big question I've got hanging over all this.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to ask it yet because I know Michael's going to turn around and say, well, I'll get to that in a minute. He's getting to it. Go for it, Michael. Keep going.
Yeah, so we were discussing before the break about people not wanting to do the work if they got a universal basic income guarantee. Clint was saying, well, there may not be any builders around anymore. Now, a solution I've got to that is
correctional facilities.
Don't need them anymore.
Well, the old school chain gang, you can still get them out building roads.
Don't need to.
Really?
No. People always want to do contribute to society in some way. Anyway, a solution I was going to talk about is a system promoted by an author called Malcolm Greenstuart. He's actually an electrical engineer. He's suggesting we set up a currency system that is based on the kilowatt hour. And we set up these solar systems, solar energy systems, and we store the solar energy in batteries, like the Tesla batteries being set up in South Australia. Stop for a sec.
Pump your brakes. The Tesla battery.
Right.
I don't know if many people know about this. What's the size of the giant square batteries that you can usually buy? What are they, Michael?
Those big square things we use in the kids' toys and stuff?
Inside, sometimes they are AA batteries. Full of AA batteries. Okay, so sometimes if you want cheap AA batteries, you're better off going and buying one of those big square ones, breaking it open and pulling out all the AA batteries inside
the 9-volt batteries.
The 9-volt batteries, thank you, Michael. But the Tesla battery is made of the very similar same concept as what I was just talking about, where those AA
They're
batteries.
all lithium-ion batteries that they use in laptop batteries, and they're maximised.
They've just daisy-balled a whole heap of them into one giant battery.
There's a more efficient system that I can get to if we've got time later that I've heard about. They're called Ambry batteries, which are grid-level batteries that are different technology.
He's full of it, isn't he?
He's not full of it. He has too much information.
But he's full of it.
He's full of it. Yeah,
I love
full of the information.
Come on, Michael, let's go.
Anyway, so Malcolm Greenstuart wrote this book called Cosmic Accounting. He was an electrical engineer, and he was suggesting that we set up a currency system that is based on the energy supplied by the sun, freely by the sun. And by the way, the sun supplies about 10,000 times more energy per day than the whole Earth uses in a day. And so there's plenty of solar energy excess to requirements that we can store. And he was suggesting we store it in these battery storage systems, or any kind of systems. It could be, pumped hydro. It could be supercapacitances. It could be these flow cell batteries. It could be these Ambry batteries, or these these Tesla batteries, giga batteries that are being set up in South Australia. It doesn't really matter what the technology is. The main thing is the solar energy or the wind energy or wave energy, whatever sustainable energy that you can generate that originally sourced from the sun anyway, is stored in some kind of storage system, say batteries.
What about the road?
And
He'll
let's
get
put
to
a
that.
pause on that. And
He's just shooting me down all night. I love it.
and so you store this energy, and you assign and there's so many kilowatt hours of energy stored in these batteries, and so the basis of his cosmic accounting system is that you distribute that stored energy amongst the whole population. When men, women, children, not just males, not just adults, I mean, but everybody, man, woman, child, baby, everybody. You distribute it equally via the internet, via a special bank account called a kilowatt hour bank account. And the total storage is divided by the population, say in Australia, is divided by 24 million, and every single person gets 1/24 millionth of that stored energy, and it goes as a credit to their bank account. And so, and then you can use that as a currency at the supermarket to buy your food, pay off your mortgage, pay for your rent, whatever, like that.
Hang on.
And then that way,
hang on, he's lost me.
people do
No,
not
stop. You've lost me. Okay, because
read the book.
No. If you're losing me, you're losing some other
Yes,
people
yes,
as
I
well.
understand.
So what I wanted to say, how can you bank sunlight and turn that into currency to purchase goods?
Well, it's more. It's
You're banking a light frequency and monetizing a light frequency.
but there's substance to it. There's more substance to a kilowatt hour currency than there is to this present
Keep going.
Australian dollar fiat currency. There's no currency in the world whatsoever now that is backed by gold or anything precious at the moment. The only value that any currency system has at the moment is the value ascribed to it by government. It actually says on there, this can be used to pay for private and public debts.
I'm opening my wallet.
And that's the only thing
I don't have anything
that gives value.
inside.
The Nixon shock of 1971 decoupled gold from the value
from the
of
dollar.
the US dollar.
But they came back and they put in the petrodollar, and they started valuing the dollar versus the
But
oil and the...
you can't go to the bank and say,
We know that,
I
yeah.
want a barrel of oil.
They won't give you
with this gold, with this dollar. That's why the Federal Reserve note doesn't say this.
And he decoupled
anymore.
from the gold reserves because they didn't want you going to the bank and saying, give me an ounce of gold either.
And until 1971, you could do that. Between 1945, the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1945, after World War II, and up till 1971, the gold was pegged at, what was it, $35 US
It was
an ounce?
$35 US dollars. They knocked it up to $75 US dollars when Roosevelt made it legal again for people to own gold. What they did was they moved the price peg, and that got that in. You're right about the whole Nixon situation, and then we did it with silver as well. They issued silver certificates, gold certificates, and so they actually had a $10 note or a $20 note or a $100 note that actually said this is redeemable in gold.
Yeah. Okay. So for all that time, between 1945, depending on the rate, either $35 or $70 or $75, between 1945 and 1971, and for some decades before that too, but it sort of went in and out in fashion before that, but definitely between 1945, Bretton Woods Agreement, and 1971, the Nixon shock, you could go to a bank or, a Federal Reserve shop or whatever it was, and you could say, okay, here's my dollar, I want the equivalent in gold, and that's what all the European countries starting to do during the Vietnam War, because they had all these US dollar paper notes in their treasuries in France, Germany, other European countries, and they were seeing that the US was spending more than they were earning, and so they thought, well, the value of the dollar is going to go down, let's convert it back into gold, and so they started to do that, and the US ran out of gold basically. They had no more gold to pay back to them, and so Nixon said, okay, that's the end of the road.
Exactly.
And now you have to, it's a petrodollar now. And what Nixon did was to give gold a value before he decoupled gold from it. What he did was he went to the Middle Eastern countries and he said to them, okay, from this point on, we offer you military protection. But in return for that, at our cost, but in return for that, you have to trade all your oil using US dollars, and that's where the petrodollar came up. And so after the Nixon shock of 1971, when gold was no longer coupled to the value of the US dollar became backed by oil, basically. But not everybody could use oil as, they didn't want it. Nobody wanted to go to the bank and say, I want a barrel of oil. So you couldn't do it anymore.
No, you wouldn't. We have to take a break. Beyond 333D.
It's always been a curious fact to me that the most successful science fiction storytelling involves a completely dystopic scenarios or finales, and all of them, essentially all of them. Now, maybe at the end they give you some glimmer of hope, but something bad really happened during the story. And I have mixed feelings about this in the following way. I think essentially every dystopic projection of the way technology takes us, because it's always technology gone bad, always, if it's a science fiction film. So I have never seen technology go as bad as has been projected for it in the science fiction stories. Maybe it hasn't gone that bad because the very story that describes how bad it goes is what alerts us to that possibility, and then we prevent it in the first place. I'll allow that possibility, all right? I think what's more likely is that people take a new technology and then they project it forward without any checks and balances in between the birth of the technology and the complete dystopic expression of that technology. They're forgetting that in between people are making other decisions. Oh no, let's not have it continue this way because that's dangerous. Let's continue it this way. We make these mid-course corrections all the time. All the time. If you did this back in the dawn of spaceflight, you'd think half of anyone who got in a plane would die anytime it took off. No, we made planes safer. We made safer planes. If you were at the beginning of the dawn of the nuclear era, you'd say, well, the whole world is going to end in a nuclear explosion. Okay, so we need wise leaders and wise international agreements, and we say, no, that's not going to happen. If we do use nuclear powers for energy and not for war. Right, so, yes, you need some wise shepherding of technology as you go along, but often the storytelling ignores the mid-course corrections that we put into place all the time. And so I'm believe it or not, I have confidence, enough confidence in our species to think that we will never allow society to crumble in all the ways that science fiction dystopic storytellers make it happen.
Beyond 333D. Welcome back tonight to another edition of Beyond 3D. We have the ever informative Dr. Michael Soos in the studio tonight. Matt?
We do indeed.
Now, what's the time? We have approximately, let's say, give or take 20, 25 minutes left on tonight's show, Michael. Back to turning sunlight frequencies into folded green, please.
Yes, we're coming to that. And so this is the basis of the US dollar at the moment. It's still backed by petrodollars. Now, the other thing is because the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India and China, they're trying to create their own reserve currency in the world instead of the US dollar. Because in 1945, the Bretton Woods Agreement, the world's reserve currency up to that point was the GBP, the pound sterling.
Yep.
And then after that, it became the US dollar, and Britain was not happy. But nonetheless, they had no choice in the matter because the US basically assisted in the saving of Britain from invasion by Germany at that time. So they had to go along with it. So the US dollar became a reserve currency, and to a large extent it still is. However, the BRICS country that I just mentioned, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, BRICS with an S on the end, And they said, well, let's create another reserve currency. So they decided to use either one of their own currencies, or the euro. Wanted to use the euro as well as a reserve currency rather than US dollar. And of course, the US, they didn't like that. And so I think one of the consequences of that, all these skirmishes came up, all these different wars, Iraq, Iran, and Middle Eastern wars, Afghanistan, all this stuff came up, to try to confuse the situation. So people had to use the US dollar so they could buy arms from the US. The US is the biggest supplier of arms in the world. 65% of all the armaments in the world are supplied by the US.
And then the United States got themselves into more trouble because Muammar Gaddafi decided to make the African gold dinar, and he was going to do the exact same thing. Yep. But they got rid of him.
That's why they got rid of him, basically, because of the gold dinar. If he wanted all the oil that was going to be traded in and out of Libya to be paid for in the Libyan dinar, and had to be backed by gold.
Excuse me, you two. Can we get back onto...
But we're coming back onto
sunlight frequencies, Michael.
Sunlight. So that's what I'm saying is, since the decoupling of the US dollar from the gold standard, as they called it, all the world currencies are now fiat currencies. Fiat is a Latin word which means let it be done. In other words,
I thought it was a car.
That too.
Okay.
That too. Fiat currency, small f, car, big F. So small f, fiat. Let it be done. So it means, so all that means is this US dollar note or Australian currency note, whatever it is, can be used for payment of public and private debts, and that's the only way it's given value. It's not backed by anything of substantial value, unlike the kilowatt hour currency system, whereby it's backed by stored solar energy.
Oh, we're back to this again. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's how it works.
Yep.
So it depends on the government, however, and the Reserve Bank of Australia having the guts to do that, saying, okay, we're going to change our currency, like it's been changed 4 or 5 times since Australia's inception in 1788. Well, the Western occupation of Australia since 1788, there've been several currencies. There's been the rum. Firstly, there's the Great British Pounds, and then there's the rum currency, which you trade you barter using rum bottles, and then there is the Spanish Holy Dollar, and then there was the guineas. The British Pound was still there, and then there was the Australian Pound. Then 14th of February 1966, to the tune of click over shares, we changed the currency to the Australian dollar.
Valentine's Day.
And so, yeah. I suppose that's so that people had love in their heart when they changed the currency.
Just anyway, more money to fork in.
So anyway, we've changed our currency several times. So we've changed the currency last time, 14th of February 1966. So because we've changed the currency so many times in the past, we can change the currency again, and we could say, okay, on this date, we're going to change the currency, give people 2 years' notice.
Maybe when the Queen dies.
No.
And that way they can take her off all the currency, all the money, and just start brand new.
Maybe save the comments to the end so we don't run out of time.
Sorry, who's show?
Come on, Michael, hit it.
Come on, guest.
So we could change the currency again, and all the government would have to say, and the Reserve Bank would have to support that, is that we're going to change the currency to the kilowatt hour currency. And so everybody's bank account would be topped up by this 1/24 millionth division of this huge stored energy. And Australia, and we could have 2,000 kilowatt hours per week currency being credited to your account, and it's backed up by energy that can be sold.
My hands
anywhere.
up. My hands up.
Yep.
I need to ask the question now. Where's the money for all this coming from?
It's an infrastructure project, just like the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Sydney Harbour Bridge was built in the middle of the Depression. And it was finished. It was started in about 1928, finished 1932, right in the middle of the Depression, and yet they still found the money to do that. And it took them 70 years to pay it off. It was paid off in about 2003. They said, we finally paid off the Sydney Harbour Bridge,
Now let's
But at least they had the Sydney Harbour Bridge for 70 years that wouldn't have been there unless they paid it up front. It's like any other infrastructure project. NBN, Snowy Mountain Scheme.
NBN's dead. The NBN's obsolete already.
So...
Why are we glossing over this? The NBN is dead. Let's not put it up on a pedestal.
I've got the NBN.
Bloody Mumbai's got faster NBN than we do.
I've got 94 megabits per second.
Oh, yeah,
I'm happy. I'm happy.
You're happy.
Can we roll him out of the studio?
Anyway, so it's just another infrastructure project, and they're doing it anyway. In South Australia, Elon Musk is building this battery storage system there anyway. We could use that as part of the currency system right now. It's just a matter of doing the software. You're just writing the software.
Yeah,
you can do that in 1 or 2 months.
Let me get a pen.
You can do that in 1 or 2 months. Get the website up, and bang, everybody can get a credit every month of the 1/24 millionth of that energy storage, plus all the other energy storage that we could have throughout Australia, stored solar energy or stored hydro, stored anything, and just divide that up 24 million times amongst every single permanent resident in Australia, not the tourists, of course, because they'd have to do this, their own system in their own country that they would get, and any country can do it.
So hopefully when our country can get census night right, maybe they can move forward with this wonderful plan, Michael. I love it.
The other bit of
wait, Matt, there's more.
Data.
There's more.
The other bit of data is that they've worked out that because Australia's the driest continent on the Earth, it's got very high level of sunlight because we're halfway in the tropics anyway, so we get direct sun right in the middle of the country. Got all these deserts, nothing there. If we just dedicated it's around about a 36 by 36 kilometre square of land in the middle of Australia where the sunlight is brightest,
Cooper Petey,
wherever, and we just filled it full of solar energy cells,
I know where he's
that
going.
would supply enough energy for the whole world.
That's it.
And just imagine...
Fantastic, Michael.
And just imagine the amount of kilowatt hours that would be, divide that by 24 million, everybody would probably get 1 million kilowatt hour currency per year. And the currency conversion at the time of conversion would be $1 Australian equals 1 kilowatt hour. So people sort of know what the unit is. So when they go to the shop, they spend a kilowatt hour, same as the Australian dollar at the beginning.
I think
so. Just imagine how rich not just Australia but any country could be, and you don't have to do any work.
I think, Matt,
apart from maintaining the network and the solar energy storage and all that. But once it's set up, there's no input of coal. There's no input to the system. It's all supplied by the sun. And this is our birthright as a human being.
I agree with that.
Because, like all the way nature works, the trees, the sun doesn't send an invoice to the trees saying, you owe me, $10 million per year for all the sunlight.
Good point.
So why should we as human beings do the same thing? The whole system is geared to keep people poor, to keep the elites rich.
I know. I think, Matt,
that's getting back to your oligarch.
The oligarchs.
Solution to that.
Yes.
Too. So the thing is, this is a system that the oligarchs probably won't like because it means that people will be able to follow their passion. In other words, they've got this money supplied by the sun.
When they're bombarding people with fluoride to quieten their pineal gland.
Yeah, like Hitler did in the 1930s, yeah. Anyway, so they're not going to like it. But getting back to the system that Malcolm Greenstuart, in his book Cosmic Accounting, he suggested there are 4 levels of gaining income. One is the basic income guarantee, like I've just suggested, from this solar energy array being the currency, supply divided by 24 million in this case. So everybody gets a credit on their bank account every day showing, your credit today is 400 Australian dollars or kilowatt hours, whatever it is. So that's one. So you get the basic income guarantee. Now, if you've got a job, like you were saying before, Matt, about you need somebody to do the sewers, need somebody to do all the maintenance, all the dirty work, and stuff like that, they would still get paid for that on top of their basic income guarantee. So if people would say if the basic income guarantee started at 100,000 a year, like a kilowatt hour system, or even the present system, you could do that. if you get paid on top of that, you might get paid another $100,000 a year if you're a tradie, whatever. So you get $200,000 a year, and then you can afford a bigger house like that. So there's still going to be rich people and people, but the poorest people would be on $100,000 a year. So that would mean that no more poverty in the country whatsoever. So that's the second level of income. They get paid for any work they do on top of their basic income guarantee. The third way they could get paid is to create efficiencies in their own home. In other words, if they have a more efficient home electricity system, so they don't use so much energy, that means more energy goes on their bank account. Because a part of this system of the kilowatt hour system is that if you've got solar energy on your roof or in your home or in your yard, that will get credited to the grid.
Yep.
And so they get credited to your bank account.
That happens now, doesn't it, though, with solar?
Yeah, but if you look at the numbers, it's kind of skewed.
I know somebody who's got a very small solar kit, and he's being paid to put energy back into the grid.
Oh, they'll pay you.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, but not very much.
They're not paying you very much.
Well, he's not forking out any money for any power bills whatsoever.
Well, that's very good, but they're only giving you what they charge. They'll charge 25 cents, but they only give you 6 cents.
Yeah, so it's very small. But the thing is, they send you a check once a year, but this system you get credited straight away.
Constantly.
And anyway, so in terms of the oligarchs not liking this because people are following their passion and not having to work if they don't want to work and that kind of thing, they're not going to like it. And also, this global solar energy grid, that would mean that you could have electric cars, electric vehicles anywhere. Wherever there's an internal combustion engine at the moment, you could replace it with an electric motor. And so all the fuel revenue is going to go down, the fossil fuel energy is going to go down. You don't need coal anymore, you don't need oil, you don't even need gas, because everything can be done with electricity. Or the gas, instead of mining it out of the ground, you could set up a sewage system. You get methane gas from all the sewage from the whole country like that. So you could get gas from that rather than doing the coal seam gas and destroying the base water under the ground. Now, in terms of the oligarch system, initially what I would suggest is that this basic income guarantee is only paid to those people who are willing to create these large groups of yogic flyers and meditators in the country. So I would suggest we start with a group of 108,000, which is 27 villages of 4,000 each in the central part of the country. I would suggest that we promote it to the indigenous population in Central Australia first, create this huge effective coherence in the centre of the country by having these people practicing transcendental meditation, yogic flying in groups twice a day, 3 or 4 hours twice a day in these large groups in the central part of Australia. And it can be replicated throughout Australia as well in the bigger cities. And that would create enough coherence and peace and bliss in the country, but not in the country, but also throughout the whole world, so that these oligarchs will be influenced to do the right thing.
He's done it again, Matt.
There you go.
He's done it again. Dr. Soos, thank you for coming in tonight to Beyond 3D. We've absolutely loved you being in here. I know I do like to have a bit of fun with you sometimes.
And it was Josiah Gibbs, Yale University.
You know the story. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Have you got the link for it?
I'll get you the link.
Okay.
Fascinating.
That'll put the link up on the website for Beyond 3D.
Absolutely. We'll do that.
We'll do that tonight.
And also do the link for Buckminster Fuller, that quote.
Will do.
10,000.
Will do.
And that's all we have time for tonight, Matt.
Indeed. We will catch you guys next week for another edition of Beyond 3D.
And don't forget to look us up on Facebook, which is Beyond 3- and the letter D.
Take care, people.
Good night. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.